guys, if you're interested in bulletproofing a diesel pickup truck, this is your video. Recently we had our 10-year-old Ford F250 6-liter, which we call Seymour, completely bulletproofed at Bulletproof Diesel in Mesa, Arizona. In this video, I'm going to tell you and show you everything that was done to our truck. 6-liter engine had some design problems. This is bad. We bought our truck new in 2007, and we actually got about 84,000 miles on our original oil cooler and EGR cooler before they failed. When those parts fail, the results can potentially be catastrophic. So this company in Mesa, Arizona called Bulletproof Diesel saw these problems and really recognized an opportunity. And that opportunity was to engineer new parts that fixed the factory design.
Exactly. So this is what it looks like from the factory. It has a radiator inside of it. And what happens is the oil cooler in its restriction restricts coolant flow to the EGR cooler. So when this gets restricted, it gets superheated. When that superheating happens, it eventually will allow some coolant to go in there, which causes a flash boiling to happen. And when that happens, it'll crack inside of here and fail completely. At that point, you'll have coolant actually going into the exhaust system. You'll see steam out the tailpipe.
84,000 miles.
Oh, so you've got to have.
So we've seen that steam.
Right.
Yeah, we've got a video on YouTube about it.
Nice.
Check it out. Live.
So bulletproofing, that concept of bulletproofing was born. Bulletproof Diesel makes the parts that are shipped out to mechanics around the country that are going into these Ford 6-liters. Our truck was pretty much completely factory original stock. Seymour has been paid for a very long time. New trucks, the prices have really climbed in recent years. If you go out and price a really nice new diesel truck, you're gonna see sticker prices that go into the $70,000 and $80,000 range. So when you contrast a truck that is completely paid for with a truck that might cost, say, $75,000, you can see there's a pretty strong financial incentive to keep riding the old pony. So for these reasons, we decided to get our good old F250 Seymour bulletproofed. We dropped off our truck at Bulletproof Diesel. We actually did so the night before the work began. That's so truck engine could cool off overnight, and the technicians at Bulletproof Diesel could drive the truck with a cold engine. The next day, got a call from Bulletproof Diesel, and their technicians had taken our truck for a test drive, made Seymour turn his cylinder heads and cough. We had at least 6 of 8 injectors that were having trouble. 2 of them were misfiring badly, 4 of them were also misfiring. So clearly Seymour needed a new set of injectors. But we knew that we wanted to get this truck bulletproofed. I didn't want to get back on the road and be worried in the back of my mind that I was going to have another EGR cooler failure or oil cooler failure. I also didn't want Seymour to blow a head gasket. So we made a big decision. We decided we wanted to step up to the level 3 bulletproofing. In addition to adding an EGR cooler, an oil cooler, and all the Bulletproof Diesel goodies that are in level 2, level 3 gets you a new set of cylinder heads with new factory head gaskets and ARP head studs. If you've never seen the cab lift of one of these trucks, it's a pretty remarkable process to witness. whole point of lifting the cab is obviously it makes access to the engine so much easier. And Jacob, our technician at Bulletproof Diesel, was really just a great guy. It was remarkable to watch him work and kind of be side by side with him over the course of 2 or 3 days and just see everything that he was doing. You know, when you work on one of these engines, you're really testing not only your mind, but your body. Jacob told me he's done this job literally hundreds of times. Over the years, he's developed a really specialized knowledge and expertise with regard to the Ford 6-liter engine. So we saw the cab come off the truck, and then the teardown began and the new parts started going in. Bulletproof Diesel EGR cooler. This is kind of a no-brainer. The original Ford factory EGR cooler was flawed. It relies on, I believe you'd call it a tube and radiator style design. If you're not familiar with EGR coolers, EGR stands for exhaust gas recirculation. It is a piece of emissions gear that recirculates hot exhaust gases within the engine, and it actually cools those gases. And when it would get clogged with particulates, over time, it would simply lose its effectiveness and stop working, and the temperatures inside your engine would increase and all sorts of bad things would happen.
It's not gonna go. He's gonna die. Nope. We're not going anywhere.
The Bulletproof Diesel EGR cooler, in a lot of ways, is the backbone of their business. It is extremely reliable, and it's legal in all 50 states. The factory oil cooler in the 6-liter engine was the root of the problem. Inside it, again, it's sort of a radiator grid, had both oil and coolant passing through these tiny little passageways. And over time, what happens is there are particulates in the coolant that clog that factory oil cooler up. So what Bulletproof Diesel has done, they decided, let's not even try to fix that factory oil cooler. Let's replace the factory oil cooler with a better, more reliable design.
By removing the stock oil cooler, you're taking some of the load off the cooling system because you're no longer using the coolant to cool that oil in that cooler anymore.
Right.
So your cooling system is going to work a little bit better because it's going to be a little more efficient, less heat to disperse basically. And now you have this big air to oil cooler or liquid to air cooler in the front, and it's just more efficient at doing its job than that little tiny cooler.
It's got more oil and everything. So
more
you sort of get
surface area.
benefits for both systems.
Yeah. So this is a return. This is going to be the feeds and the returns. So you got oil that feeds the engine, the crankshaft and everything, and it comes up. It would normally come up and go through the oil cooler inside of here. Mm-hmm. And then one of these is for coolant. So this, you have the oil passage that cools the oil, and then the coolant that actually does the cooling on the oil. So now we remove all of that. This is the oil transfer manifold or the oil transfer block. And this is what replaces the oil cooler. It replaces the entire oil cooler housing.
You know, there were a couple of other issues with the factory oil cooler. There is a tower where your oil filter resides. Well, there's a tiny little piece of plastic that holds that oil filter in place. If that plastic snaps, your oil is not even being filtered. And by the way, on the bottom of that Bulletproof Diesel oil cooler, there is a filter screen that is now stainless steel.
All that crap that gets up in there goes through that screen and goes through your pump and basically makes it less
effective.
Yeah, it wears it out and causes it to fail early. To prevent that from happening, we use this screen right here.
Wow.
So it has nowhere to go. It's a much better. It's all stainless steel.
Nice.
It's not going to just break apart. The really early ones were like a nylon mesh, inside there, and then the heat and just the oil would wear them. They make, you know, you pull them apart, and there would be no screens in those panels. This is where that little screen would sit. So it gets nothing after we're done. We remove the cloth out of here, and it's just, you know, the tube that feeds the high pressure oil pump. And then it's basically just a housing for the oil now that feeds the high pressure pump. So no more cooler up there.
So the Bulletproof diesel oil cooler is a much more reliable design, and it just does away with so many problems because you get rid of that factory oil cooler.
Great shot. The leg shot.
So the oil in our truck now passes through this large reservoir that's mounted right behind the front grille of our truck, and that oil is air cooled. And we actually increased the capacity of oil when we did this. We went from 15 to 16 quarts in our truck. Now the truck holds 21, 22 quarts. I will say that after getting rid of the factory oil cooler and EGR coolers, I have much greater peace of mind. It's not so much about performance. I mean, you're not going to change these two pieces of gear and suddenly see some sort of horsepower and torque boost in your engine. It doesn't work that way. But what you are doing is you're eliminating two of the major pattern failures that happen with the 6-liter engine. And these are the two that account for probably 90% of the problems. We went the extra step of installing an AMSOIL bypass filtration system. This adds a second oil filter to our truck. The primary oil filter is made by a company called WIX. These are readily available in automotive shops around the country. It's kind of an old school spin-on design. It has the O-ring kind of built in to the cartridge. It's just simply a very reliable filter that you can find just about anywhere. So our primary oil filter is now mounted in the front fender area of the driver's side of the truck. The secondary or bypass filter is mounted in the same space on the passenger side. The way the bypass filter works is a smaller portion of oil goes through that finer bypass filter.
It's a smaller, finer micron filter, and it's a bypass filtration. So basically, it never filters all the oil. It's just a small bit of the oil always goes through there all the time.
Oh, he talked to us about this the other day.
Yeah, it's a good thing to have for longevity, but I've got it on my own truck, and I mean, I couldn't tell you if it's done any good or any bad. So I mean, I just take care of my truck. So.
The benefits of bypass filtration: cleaner oil, obviously. It means you can go longer between oil changes in theory, and it should just extend the life of your engine. You know, if you believe in filtering your oil, then it makes good sense to have a bypass filtration system.
It's actually going to do better for your injectors because you're going to have better filtration on the oil side here, so they should last longer.
Since our truck was suffering from stiction, of course, we replaced all 8 injectors.
Hydraulic electronic unit injection.
Yeah, or whatever.
HUE, yeah. So what that's saying is that the change from low pressure fuel to high pressure fuel happens inside the fuel injector instead of using the pump to do it. So it's kind of a neat system. It's just really complex and has a lot of points of failure, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, but most likely the way yours failed is in here. Just crud getting built up inside there. So. And you can see these two pieces are the electronic coils, and then there's a valve inside there that moves back and forth depending on which side is energized. And that opens and closes the port to allow the high pressure oil to go down into here, into the fuel side. And then there's like down here is what we call the intensifier piston. And that's what takes the high pressure here and allows it to take the low pressure fuel and increase the pressure inside the injector.
Okay.
So the fuel pressure coming out of the injector, you know, is thousands of PSI, but it's only 45 PSI, 50 PSI, you know, getting fed to it. And then you have the high pressure here. So it's at the most it'll be 4,000 PSI oil pressure. And we're trying to get 15,000 PSI or so of fuel pressure out of here.
Let's get the money shot.
Money being
Literally. Yeah. F.I.C.M stands for Fuel Injection Control Module. There's a F.I.C.M logic board and there's a power supply. The F.I.C.M boards, they convert 12 volt power to 48 volt, and that voltage is sent to your injectors. And then the factory design, the F.I.C.M power supplies tended to fail over time. Our F.I.C.M power supply was only outputting around 42 volts, so it was going down. What Bulletproof Diesel has done is they've created a F.I.C.M power supply. It's much better design. It's a billet housing with large heat fins, and they use better components inside. And with 6-phase F.I.C.M, you can actually choose the voltage that you send to your injectors.
And all your injection timing and everything is done through here.
Logic board, there's the factory, you know, it's bulletproof.
Yep. So it has a little guide in here, so if you ever want to go and adjust it to 58 volts or you want to set it back to 48, here's your guide. It tells you for this voltage, this voltage.
So we opted to go with 53 volts, which is more power than delivered by the factory F.I.C.M, but less than 58. So I guess it's just right. If you have one of these 6-liter trucks, over time, you're probably going to have issues with your F.I.C.M. If you want a really nice long-term solution, the Bulletproof Diesel parts are a great choice. Next up, the Bulletproof Diesel billet water pump. This one's another no-brainer choice. The factory water pump has a plastic impeller.
You got it's like a composite plastic impeller. So the main failure on these is they'll crack here and they'll just spin on the shaft.
Right.
And they don't move the water anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this obviously cures that problem.
Yep.
Plastic just doesn't age well, and eventually it will develop cracks. You know, anytime that I can swap a plastic part for a metal part, sign me up. When you step up to level 3, you're talking about new cylinder heads and ARP head studs and new factory gaskets.
It's my Christmas present.
Yeah. The exhaust valve seats get cut out, and then we have new ones put in, hardened seats put in. Metal, basically, that gets pressed in there after it gets cut out. We see on the exhaust side with all the heat and everything, we've got a lot of cracks in the valve seats. And you lose a little bit of compression that way. So we get those cut out, new seats put in, and then it eliminates that problem. Stock head bolts are what they call torque to yield. Basically, you're using an amount of turn to get the torquing force, the clamping force out of the bolts. These use just a standard torque spec. So you'll do 3 steps, so 70, 140, and then 210 foot-pounds. And it gives it more even clamping force, basically. More of a consistent clamping force. part of the problem with the cylinder head design on this is it only has 10 head bolts.
Yeah.
So with the cylinder pressure being increased by the turbocharger and just the high compression of the motor itself, it's a lot of force on those bolts. And then you already stretched them basically to torque it down. So they're stretched, so it kind of weakens the bolt in the first place. Then you get all that pressure and the heat cycling of it and everything. So they want to stretch more. So then what we find most of the time on these, it's not a blown head gasket. Like on a gas engine, you'll have a blown head gasket and there'll be, you know, crack right through, you know, cylinder to cylinder, and you're just getting compression between the cylinders. On these, what's actually happening is the head lifts off of the block.
Wow.
So you're not having a crack in the gasket itself, it's just coming off the gasket.
Separates.
Yeah. So and it only happens, you know, very, very minute amount, but it's enough to get coolant makes, you know, combustion gases into your cooling system and all those kind of problems.
Switching from bolts to head studs gives you just a lot more security and reliability. During the teardown of the engine, when those parts are removed from the engine, everything gets thoroughly cleaned. Something else done at Bulletproof Diesel that was really important is they broke down and cleaned our turbocharger.
So this is the surface that the unison ring, they call it, will ride on. This is the actuator that drives the unison ring. The unison ring drives the VGT vanes, and the vanes are what control back pressure. So the more open the vanes are, the less back pressure. The more closed they are, the more back pressure. During low speed, just off idle, you want as much back pressure almost as you can get, so that you can spin this wheel up to get it boosting to get you down the road.
Usually just take a file to it, get all the heavy stuff knocked off.
This is the original turbo that came out of Seymour. The turbo's been thoroughly cleaned, like removed, taken apart, cleaned, kind of top to bottom, so that you can see the exterior is shiny. The parts end up looking pretty much like new or almost like new. I can say with confidence that our engine hasn't looked this good since the day we bought it. Bulletproof Diesel goes through the engine, and in different places in the engine where there have been parts updates or upgrades, they will make those changes. The intercooler piping on our truck on the driver's side was plastic. Now, for some reason, Ford changed this to plastic. I believe the 05 trucks, so 05, 6, and 7 had plastic on that side. Previously, the trucks had metal on that side. So Bulletproof Diesel switches the intercooler piping back to metal because metal is better than plastic. Newsflash. A lot of you guys have mentioned the Blue Spring upgrade kit. Bulletproof Diesel did install the new spring, so our fuel pressure would have the benefits of that upgrade. We got a new serpentine belt because you don't want to be 2,000 miles from home and have a broken belt. Fan clutch wire harness saver. If you look at the 6-liter engine, the wire harness for the fan clutch runs really close to the fan blades. And in some cases, you know, if you're on like a really bumpy or rough road, that wire harness is getting bounced around in there. And there have been situations where the harness has actually been sliced in half by the fan. Bulletproof Diesel has come up with this little part. It's basically a piece of aluminum that they clamp onto the wire harness that will protect it if it ever does have any kind of contact with the fan. You know, where they have seen these different failures over time, they've found solutions and they will work those solutions into your truck. And again, that's something that I think you're going to get from Bulletproof Diesel that you're probably not going to get from your average shade tree mechanic. Of course, Seymour got fresh fluids, fresh filters, all that good stuff. Well, the very first crank, Seymour was acting like he didn't want to start. So I walked over to the truck. Yep, lo and behold, Seymour fired right up, sounded great. One other piece of gear that we got at Bulletproof Diesel is called a Scan Gauge 2. This allows you to monitor certain information that is being produced by your truck. Now, if you don't have a scan gauge, you just can't see it any other way, really. Accurate engine oil temperature, your transmission fluid temperature, your coolant temperature. All the guys at Bulletproof Diesel said if you do nothing else, you can get a Scan Gauge 2 and you can monitor exactly what's happening with your truck. Now, Bulletproof Diesel has Scan Gauge 2s that are pre-programmed for the 6-liter. If you have a 6-liter Ford, then it might behoove you to get your Scan Gauge 2 at bulletproofdiesel.com.
All right, guys. This will be the first time that I've actually driven Seymour since the full level 3 bulletproofing was done. Ready?
Start him up. Woo! Sounds good.
Obviously, the new injectors have solved this diction. The new F.I.C.M power supply is really helping power those new injectors so it fires right up. Oil cooler, EGR cooler, and water pump are all about peace of mind. The new head with head studs is about performance and reliability over the long term. Put all this together and you have a truck that is completely bulletproofed. So that's it, guys. The whole process of bulletproofing our truck. I know this video was kind of intricate and detailed, but I wanted all of you gearheads to actually see what went on under the hood of our truck, and I hope this video has been helpful to you. I can't say enough good things about Bulletproof Diesel, the team at Bulletproof Diesel. I mean, we had a great time there. Christy actually did get to drive the Bulletproof Diesel tank, which is one of several military vehicles they have on the property.
No one died.
Not yet, anyway.
I would recommend their services with absolute confidence to anyone. The whole company has, I believe, 35 or 40 employees, and a big portion of their business, if not the heart of the business, is really on the manufacturing side. And they actually engineer and make the parts that are used by mechanics around the country to fix these trucks. So it's really a treat that you can take your truck to their shop and have their technicians fix your truck. Of course, you can always order Bulletproof Diesel parts online and then have one of their preferred installers handle the installation. But if you have a way to get your truck to Mesa, Arizona, then I think you would be very wise to have the work done there at Bulletproof Diesel, because this is what those guys do. For up-to-date costs on bulletproofing your truck, check out bulletproofdiesel.com, or better yet, just give Bulletproof Diesel a call. We will also be posting an article on longlonghoneymoon.com with more details on cost. If you get one of these 6-liter Fords bulletproofed, I think you're going to end up with a truck that's enjoyable to drive and is also reliable. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks to Bulletproof Diesel in Mesa, Arizona for everything they did to good old Seymour. Until next time, as always, if you're new here, please subscribe. Lo ho.